All right, so I just finished that primer video I was working on for like week one of VR Dev, kind of explaining that more about the teachers, not the students. Talking about the project I'll be involved with, the UX readings, and how to be like a user, a VR user before you can train your students to be VR users, before you can kind of get them up to being like super users and designers and developers. Um, so let me move into some beginnings of week two, or I should say, really sprint two. Um, Again, this project is here. The link for it is up on is this part two VR dev. This code right here. We'll go right to it. But I want to recap how to bring the Oculus Sdk or asset into your Unity project and how to bring Probuilder. I was kind of looking at the Probuilder videos, and I didn't really see just they got pretty. They went to like texture and all over the place. Not kind of just. I just wanted to use as just a very light modeling tool, and unfortunately, let's see if I can go back some more. I just wasn't finding a lot at the moment. It used to be an external tool, a third-party asset tool for Unity. Unity integrated it, and so to me anyway, it seems like their tutorials are a little out of date. They're about more advanced stuff, maybe building out a whole level. But what I think I'll do is I'll post up the link to here. This was their site before Unity integrated them, and they have a bunch of tutorials. And as like a starting 3D modeling tool, it's really good. It's not as advanced as its own third-party software like a Blender, Maya Max, Houdini, but you don't need it to be, nor do you want that kind of overhead, that steep learning curve to students. So I don't even really use it for texturing right now, just to get some rough models out, just to look around VR. Like, what is this landscape? What is this environment? These spatial considerations for just like the first step of designing for VR. Like, what does this environment, this space should look like? So now we introduce these 3D modeling tools, maybe a little bit of lighting, um, maybe some texturing. I'm not really sure right now. I'm just kind of doing an intro just as it comes. So I'm going to go back to this project, but I'll just do a new scene. I'm not messing around within a scene that has content already that you need to get to. So you can use any version of Unity. I just happen to be using the last 2018 version, 2.2 F1, but you can be in 2019. Um, so one way or another, you're going to get the Oculus tools, and I kind of covered it in the last video from week one, but there's a few ways you can either grab it on the store, the Oculus integration, um, and just import it, or now the more up to date way, I guess I should say, is go into the package manager. So like the asset store is like features and like SDKs, more developer kits and tools besides the core of Unity, but developed the asset store anyway. It's developed by third party people. Usually they're trying to sell it for a price or it's for free. But the package manager is like this. It's like additional features, SDKs, tools, developer kits, whatever you want to call it. But they're internal to Unity. So if you go, this is in project currently. You see, I already have Probuilder, ProGrids, but I'm going to go to all and just say, if you go down to, here's Probuilder and ProGrids, and you get something like this. And I just clicked on another one to show that I don't have it. It'll say install. But notice I have an arrow here at Probuilder. It says I'm a little out of date. So sure, I'll update it. And kind of this will show you kind of what it looks like when you click install. This little pop-up window will appear, and it's installing files and assets, and you just kind of have to let it run. Um, and you're noticing this popping up when you switch build settings or maybe open Unity for the first time. Um, it's kind of this whole project of files and meta files and all this stuff. It's just updating it. So anyway, now my Probuilder is in project. It's updated. So you can go ahead and bring in Probuilder and ProGrids. They're sister programs. This will let you model, and this will let you have a little more accuracy, kind of snapping to the grid a little bit that Unity doesn't do, that other packages do, that says is useful. While we're in here, you got the Oculus stuff. So you can bring in Oculus standalone. This is for Windows, for desktop, the Rift. But if you're doing Go or Quest or Gear VR, you're going to want this Android one. So notice how I don't have it installed, but since I did it the kind of the older way. I went to the asset store. In either case, it's going to install a folder in assets called Oculus. Probably this plugins will come along for the ride, what have you. And if you look at the Oculus folder, we have a whole bunch of stuff. Audio managers, avatars, which are the visual representation of real players, and what they call NPCs, or non-real players, non-players characters. Actually, so besides the visual content, there's a lot of the stuff that comes along for the road that's already built for you, like networking and cameras and hand controls and what have you. And yeah, sure, lip sync, different platforms, a spatializer, voice mod. So there's a ton of stuff in here, and to be honest, you just don't need to know a lot about it. It's all done for you. It's a nice little kit. All you're gonna show is in that other video how you just brought in that local avatar, which I'll do later on. But notice now we have Oculus up these in our little menu up here. And I don't use this stuff, to tell me if it needs to be updated. There you go. You can update your plugin. Rest of this stuff I don't use. And spatializer. I get some type of audio spatializer, I guess it looks like. And over here, tools will be getting involved in this. ProGrids, Probuilder, Recorder. I guess it's some type of screen capture. I don't use that. But know that we've installed Probuilder, ProGrids, and the Oculus Sdk. And this is what we'll be using for the rest of the class. Or the rest of this teacher training, I should say. So, one thing I was going to note is that that's when you know that it's successfully installed. They have their tabs up here, but I really don't interact with them. I'm going to interact. Yeah, I do actually open up this here. So yeah, we will. This is how you open up the Probuilder window. I'll move it over, close it. And this is going to how you open ProGrids, which I have to go to scene view. It's this little thing right here. So I'll just turn that back off. Close ProGrids. I'm just going to close everything until we're ready. So we have an empty scene. And if I look into, looks like this is basically under Oculus, sample framework, down here, core avatar grab prefabs. Prefabs. This local avatar with grab. I'm just gonna pull it in my scene, press the F key, and I think it's gonna work. First off, remember you have to run. I already have it running. Let me minimize it. Move it over here. I've got my Oculus app running. If I go to devices, it shows my headset and my sensors are working, and I'm going to grab my controllers and get the right right one's working, but my battery's down. See my left one. Left one's good. All right. So I always have a few batteries. So actually, let's replace the right one. See if we can get that indication to go better. So I pop the battery out. There we go. 100%. Perfect. Sorry about the noise. So I guess once a week or what have you, you're gonna have to check your devices or train your students to take a look at devices, make sure your batteries aren't red or what have you. But now everything is green, connected, full charge, we're good. I'm just gonna click play, and I just want to see if I have nothing in the scene. It's completely empty, and I'm waving one hand. And let me see if yeah, you can see that. All right, I'm just peeking through, so you can see my two hands. Perfect. So I can see it. So the one thing you can't see is I'm actually hitting my barrier, and I'm getting like that kind of invisible fence, but it doesn't seem to be shown in Unity. But just be aware that you'll be seeing it, and if your students see it, they'll have to reset your boundary. But awesome. While we're in here, I wanted to switch over to scene view, not game view, and show you. Right now I'm moving my left hand. So this is what this camera is looking like. I know it looks weird. There's 3 cameras, but we have the left eye, the right eye, and we have a center eye too. So this is kind of just shows you in the preview camera what's happening, and maybe it's used for other type of diagnosis or ray casting out of a central point, not a left or a right eye. But we do have the left eye and the right eye. If I can click on it, and here under tracking space, left eye, center eye, right eye. So if you remember, we have like one lens per eye, one monitor basically, and they're offset in the virtual world. And that's why when we're rendered to different it can the image is offset a little bit, from left eye to right eye, and then when you map those to the lenses in the eyes, it stuff feels at different depths to you because they're rendered. So the distance that an object is from the camera, actually the closer it is, the more offset the object will appear to the left eye and right eye. So the farther an object is away from the left eye, the right eye, the less of a stereoscopic feel or difference between the two eyes. It's rather flat. There's no difference between the two. But when an object gets really close to the eyes, the object as it appears to the left eye, to the right eye, is going to be very different as it gets rendered to the 2 cameras, and that's what gives it that feeling of closeness. So I can move my head around. Notice it looks like we have an audio capturing device so we can hear stuff. It looks like we have a collider. We got our cameras set up, and as I'm clicking on stuff, it's opening up this game object, this nested hierarchy. There's a ton of stuff going on right in this local avatar with grab, and you can ignore a ton of it and tell your students to do the same. A lot of people did a lot of work for you so that you can have an easier time with VR development. So I'm going to wave my 2 hands. Notice when I put a hand down, after a while, that you notice that the hand disappears. It stops registering. But this is what the hand model looks like. If I click on it, what we're going to be talking about later on is, let me hunt around and find it. Avatar grabber left. Here we go. So this collider, we've talked about physics colliders in the previous class. Notice how we have 2 here. We have a small volume and a big volume. And this is what we're going to use a lot when we're interacting with stuff. It's actually, this is the collider that's sitting on the hand. And actually in my other project, I tweaked it quite heavily, moved its location, what have you, for pulling on levers and stuff. So actually it's important to talk about, I'm pressing the buttons right now, and you can see my hand model is updating. And all these different buttons get registered. So on my left hand, anyway, I have the X and the Y, and then this kind of thumb pad. And notice when my thumb is lifted up, the thumb model is lifted off the hand, and just as I touch that thumb joystick, it can actually register that your thumb is on it, and the thumb will go into a closed position. As I touch the index finger, it has a major movement, and the rest of the hand kind of moves slightly, but the hand doesn't close to a fist until you press that middle mouse button. And notice as I'm holding down the middle mouse button, these kind of colliders are going through an activation here. Notice how they're turning on and off. So this is later on when we get involved in this grabbable script. How do you know when something's grabbed? Well, that's when you press down on the middle mouse button. But notice I'm holding down the middle mouse button, holding down the thumb. Notice now like the thumb kind of moves into a farther position. So I'll open up the hand. The thumb only goes like halfway. And when I close, I'm closing my middle finger, kind of goes down to a fist. But notice my index finger is still extended because I'm not actually pressing the controller. And now this is me pressing it. And so this is what it looks like with the thumb and the index closed, and the thumb and the index and the whole hand closed, and just the index closed. So these are all the different positions that the hand model can be in based on what the user is pressing. And you don't have to use these all. The big one is really closing the hand. This is what I check for a lot when a user's pressing or pulling a lever or wants to pick up an object. Are they closing their hand? And that's the middle mouse button. So let me quickly open up the Oculus Sdk. I'm going to have to put a link for this as well. Controllers. Yeah, this might be the good one I want to see. So now that I was kind of going through the controllers, I'm looking for this diagram that they have. It's under develop, yeah. Just give me 1 second. This screen capture software I have doesn't have pause on it. Input. Here we go. Unity, SDK, input, OER input. So I'm going to put up a link to this because this is super useful. And I'll cover this later, how we're going to read in what the user is pressing. Was like, here we go. I was looking for this diagram here. So this is like button 4, Y, button 3, X. We got the axis 2D of the primary thumbstick on the left hand, so 2D, so you can actually register how far to the left and right, the X, the up and down, the Y, and we got the middle finger and the index finger triggers. So I'll talk about registering this later, but at least you're exposed to it. There'll be a link to it, and more importantly is that you can actually see how this hand model is registering that input. So now we're getting some feedback to the users of that their input on their controller is registering to the output, the screen. And you can start to hunt around and get used to this. This is like the one big prefab. And if I close it all up, what you have to really be aware of is avatar grabber left hand. Notice there's OVR grabber script. There's a rigid body. We'll get into that later. Notice that we have the grabbing volumes, these capsule cylinders. Right hand, exact same setup. I'm going to skip camera for right now because this is these virtual bodies that right now I don't have it rendered. To actually, I think if you go into like you can render these little cartoon avatars of yourself. Show third person. Oh, there it is. Yeah. So here's the head. Now I'm looking around. There you go. My head's moving. So is this under body? Body render part 1. Sure. So anyway, it says model for your own avatar, your head and shoulders, neck. But I'm going to turn that off. Let's see, show third person, just because it's just another thing that's a distraction. The controller left, Nope. So you can render the controller besides the hand, but these days it's very common to look at the hand. But if you did want to actually, there's a model of the actual controller. And I'm not sure how to turn it on and off right now, but if you wanted to, I'm sure you could just get used to Googling stuff and looking into the Oculus SDKs, and you'll find everything you need. I'm going to keep it simple. Here's my hand render, the different models for the hands. And last, what I really wanted to talk about, here's an Sdk Manager. You don't even have to worry about it. It's all done for you. So the OVR camera rig, I don't mess with this headset emulator. So if you wanted to get into moving the headset in the editor, emulating it moving, so pitch, rotation, activating, moving, you can do that. But we're trying to keep things simple. We're building straight to the riff, so you don't need to emulate. Again, I'm building for the Quest, which the features are almost one-to-one. And let's see, tracking space. So it's big to be aware of here. This is the anchor points for your right hand and your left hand. Not the models and not the grabbable stuff. This is the actual just registering where that left hand is that this is working with too. And I make use of this in some of my scripts. So I have left eye, center eye, and right eye. Again, they're all set up for you. You don't even have to mess with it. If you want to track the hand, so for example, look where it's pointing. Later on, if I want to register where a user is pointing to, look at that blue arrow. That's Z positive local on the hand. That's where you're going to shoot your raycast out of. So to see where the hand is pointing at. So if the user clicks, makes a fist, or presses one of the keys and they're pointing at something, whether it's a 2D user interface or some 3D object, you can raycast from this hand right here, this blue arrow, and see what they're pointing at, see what you hit. And yes, you could do it in this case, since avatar grabber left and right are activated, you see it, the blue arrows pointing the same way. But these left-hand, right-hand anchors existed before you could actually grab stuff. Maybe some instances you don't want the grabber, so at least you have these anchor points showing you where the hand is pointing. And this is where we're doing our array casting from. And if you want to keep track of where the head is, using the center eye, left eye, so you can see where the user is looking at or where their head is rotated at or the height of it. So I'll dynamically adjust the stations in my app because I don't know the users. I was making it for middle school kids. They're maybe 4 to 5 feet tall, and I'm building for myself, which is 6 feet. And so I look at what the top of where the head location is. In this case, you can see here it's at 1.7, 1.8 meters, and I could move down and say, okay, usually from the head, I want these consoles that you're interacting with at hand height, which is about the stomach, the abdomen area. So I can figure out where the head is at and just subtract, a certain amount, maybe, I'm not sure what I did, 0.7 meters or something, or a half a meter. And that's where I made sure that the interactables for the hands were at. But just so if you ever wish to read in where the user's head is at, you can look at this stuff. So all this is just wrapped up under local avatar with grab, which is under Oculus, Sample Framework Core, Avatar Grab, and Prefabs. And there was a whole bunch of little sample scenes in here. Looks like here's some of them under VR. You can try these out. See what each one is giving you a little sample idea of. I think there's more too. Very quickly gonna just click around. It doesn't look to be seen, so I'm gonna click on Oculus. I'm just gonna filter this little tag thing here, and it's this one, scene, VR scenes, yeah. Yeah, I was just seeing if there's any other scenes that were really sticking out, those spatializer scenes. It looks like maybe they have some sample scenes scattered about each feature area. But I think as long as you can get to that prefab, you're good. And as long as you can just go down to VR and scenes, at least you have some sample scenes within the Oculus kit to work with. Um, so with that, I'm going to end the video here to at least say this is how you start a new project. This is how you bring in the Oculus SDK, either through the asset store or the package manager. And then with the package manager as well, this is where you get Probuilder and Pro Grids, which is what I'm going to want to cover in the next video.